And the next state I want to talk about is thriving. This is where we separate from primates. This is a purely human experience. I mean, a lot of things in nature can thrive. Thriving is not exclusive to humans, but how the human brain functions and responds to it is very different. So what happens when we enter a thriving state? Dopamine is released. Dopamine is often, just like serotonin, stated to be a feel-good chemical. It's better to think of serotonin as the chemical of safety and well-being, and dopamine as a success chemical, more than just a feel-good chemical, more than just a pleasure chemical. Now, when dopamine's released, we feel good. We feel good. We do feel pleasure, but again, it's not triggered by pleasure. The result of dopamine being released is pleasure. We feel peaceful. We're back to human homeostasis, and a lot of things happen in the body that I'm going to get into in detail. But ultimately, that feel good is the release of dopamine, which then we feel successful and valuable. So again, thinking of this as a success chemical more than a feel-good chemical, a pleasure chemical, helps us to understand the power it has in our lives and in our brain function. At a physical level, what we're doing when we are able to finally return to homeostasis and be firing dopamine in a healthy way, we're actually shrinking the amygdala. There have been studies in neuroscience where they found with the right kind of practices, in 5 weeks, people shrink their amygdala enough to visibly see the difference. As small as the amygdala is, they can visibly see the difference. So it minimizes our fight or flight response. Our systems become fully engaged, which means we're healthy and regenerative. Our body heals. The body heals naturally. We're not trying to, like, miraculous healing isn't a miracle. Medical science doesn't dismiss it because it's a miracle. They dismiss it because it's commonplace. They say that the average person by the age of 40 has had and cured cancer in their body at least 4 times, right? The body's constantly, right? If you cut your finger, it heals. If you break a bone, it heals. You know it'll do that. But it doesn't heal well if the systems are off because you're not producing enough stem cells. You're not regenerating the cells in the right way. They're not DNA, as well as everything else in the body when we're triggered, contracts. And so it's not going to be healthy cell regeneration. On a mental level, you'll feel successful and valuable. You feel clear, centered, capable, no longer subject to conditions. We feel confident, self-realized. At emotional level, we have a low emotional response, right? This is often called emotional intelligence. We tend to live in our feeling body rather than our emotional body. This is a real differentiation between the amygdala and the insula, which I get into in deeper study. So we feel happy, healthy. We have empathy. We have compassion for people, but we aren't empathic. We don't experience other people's emotions and feelings, but we have compassion for them. It's basically a life of balance, thriving state. Okay, so again, thriving state, dopamine's released. We enter what I call human homeostasis because this is the natural state of humans. I always tell people, think of the 3-year-old. They don't have the fully mature brain developed yet that we get into when we start talking about the insula, but, they're thriving, happy, wanting to do the next thing, are flexible, all of that stuff. And so that's the natural state. That's our organic state if we're not triggering. I will talk in future sessions about what I call the striving level, which is the next level of human development. And it's where we're innovative and motivated. Now, this I do get into a little bit deeper in the science behind miraculous healing next week. I talk about it a lot in more of the advanced studies. This is where we're kind of getting more into around phase 3 and 4, so I won't cover it tonight, but I do want to mention it. I do really recognize that there's 4 states of consciousness.